They told you racism is a feeling, a personal flaw, a character defect, something that lives in the heart of bad people. But what if it was never about feelings? What if racism was a product, designed, engineered, deployed? And what if the people running the country right now are in the middle of the final phase, making sure you never find out? Watch the pattern. Let's go back before America was America. In the early colonial period, 1600s Virginia, you had poor white indentured servants and enslaved African people working the same fields, living in the same conditions, suffering under the same boot. And they knew it. In 1676, a man named Nathaniel Bacon led a rebellion. Poor whites and black people, together, armed, and they nearly burned the colonial government to the ground. That terrified the ruling class, not because of the violence, because of the unity. So they made a decision, not a feeling, a policy decision. They passed laws, the Virginia Slave Codes, that created a legal distinction between white servants and black enslaved people. They gave poor white men small privileges, the right to patrol, the right to bear arms, the right to feel superior. They didn't give them land. They didn't give them wages. They didn't give them power. They gave them whiteness. And whiteness, from that moment forward, was not a race. It was a rank, a management tool, designed to keep the exploited from ever uniting again. Race was invented, right here, in America, by the people who needed it most, the ownership class, to protect a system built on stolen land and stolen labor. That's not an opinion. That's historical record. Fast forward to 1967. Over 160 civilian disorders. 128 American cities. Newark, Detroit, Los Angeles. The country is on fire. President Lyndon Johnson, a Southern Democrat who had just signed the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, looks at what's happening and says, find out why. He appoints an 11-member commission, chaired by the governor of Illinois, Otto Kerner. 130 witnesses, 20 days of hearings, site visits in 23 cities. Johnson's own instructions: let your search be free. Find the truth and express it in your report. So they did. The Kerner Commission came back in February 1968 with one central conclusion, and it shook the entire establishment. Our nation is moving toward two societies, one black, one white, separate and unequal. And the cause? Not outside agitators, not communist infiltration, not a breakdown of personal responsibility. White racism. Built into the structure of American society, expressed through segregation, discrimination, economic exclusion, and policing. Now here's where the pattern kicks in. Johnson commissioned the truth. The truth came back, and Johnson buried it. Never accepted the findings, never acted on the recommendations, because the report didn't just indict Bull Connor and the Klan. It indicted the system. The same system Johnson was operating inside of. The same system his Great Society programs were built on top of. You can't fix what you refuse to name. And you definitely can't name it when naming it implicates you. Same as it ever was. But here's what the Kerner Commission never fully said, and what I need you to hear right now. Race did not just damage black people. The invention of whiteness was run on white people too. Poor white Americans were handed an identity instead of economic power. They were told, you may be broke, you may be struggling, but at least you're not them. And for 350 years, millions of people have been voting against their own economic interests, their own health care, their own children's schools, to protect a check that was never going to cash. That's the long con. Race was the distraction. Class was always the game. The ownership class never needed anyone to be equal or everyone to be equal. They needed everyone to be divided. And the invention of race was the most effective divide and conquer operation in human history. Now let's talk about right now. Because what's happening in America today is not a new argument about race. It's the final phase of an old operation. The attacks on DEI, the banning of so-called critical race theory, the gutting of the Civil Rights Division at the DOJ, the rollback of federal consent decrees on police departments, these are not cultural war distractions. They are a coordinated effort to remove the vocabulary used to describe the system, so the system can keep operating without ever being named. Think about that. If you can't say systemic racism, if that phrase is now treated as an attack, then every conversation about inequality has to start from zero. Every generation, every time. No history, no pattern, no accountability. You know what that is? That's Fahrenheit 451. You don't burn the books because you hate reading. You burn them because informed people are dangerous. The Kerner Commission told the truth in 1968. The government commissioned it, confirmed it, and then buried it. Today, they're not even waiting for the report. They're burning the framework before the investigation can begin. Race was invented. This is not a controversial statement. This is a documented historical fact. It was invented to divide people who had every reason to stand together. It was used to build a permanent underclass that could be exploited without moral consequence. And the moment people started to really understand that, to name it, teach it, legislate against it, the system started erasing the language. Because language is power. And they know it even if they're counting on you to forget it. I'm Keith. Watch the pattern. Because the pattern never lies. And Keith speaks.